Do you want to build your brand by being a guest on industry-leading podcasts? If you're a business leader, an author, or a speaker, my guess is that you do. Picture this. You, a dynamic executive easily connecting with engaged audiences, turbocharging your top-of-funnel marketing, and creating a treasure trove of content with every episode. Podcasting is a game changer that you've been waiting for. And podcastally.com is your VIP ticket to podcast PR success. Say goodbye to the ordinary and hello to the extraordinary exposure. Let the Podcast Ally team connect you with the best-in-class podcast for you to be a guest on. Head over to podcastally.com and use the promo code DT for a 10% discount on Podcast Ally services. That's podcastally.com, promo code DT. Welcome to High Octane Leadership with Donald Thompson. This season, we're diving deeper with more solo episodes, where I'll share the experiences that have led to recognition by EY, Forbes, Fast Company, and others. Not as a boast, but as milestones on my entrepreneurial path. From growing multi-million-dollar firms to successful business exits and building high-performance teams with a global perspective. I'll reveal the insights and strategies from my journey and share them with you so that we can win together. Alongside these solo episodes, we'll have industry visionaries and thought leaders who will explore effective leadership. Ready to empower your leadership journey with real success stories? Let's embark on this transformational journey together. In this episode of High Octane Leadership, I'm talking with Zach Nunn, a visionary entrepreneur and the founder of Living Corporate, a cutting-edge experience management startup revolutionizing the workplace. With a core focus on workplace fairness, Zach and his team leverage analytics, talent enablement, brand storytelling to cultivate an environment that prioritizes employee trust and market confidence. In addition to spearheading Living Corporate, Zach is a driving force behind Living Corporate Podcast Network, dedicated to amplifying the voices of Black and brown professionals in the workplace. Through this platform, he strives to create a space for authentic conversations and insights, fostering diversity, equity, and inclusion. Thanks for joining me on the show, Zach.
Failure is kind of part of entrepreneurship, though, right? Like learning from your mistakes, understanding how to navigate. I don't know, Donald, if I meet a lot of people who are successful entrepreneurs that aren't also pretty resilient and adaptable as they learn, right?
Yeah. And I think, we talk about entrepreneur growing your business, but we both, and I still do to a degree, I'm the CEO of a firm that was just acquired. So I work for a $100 million business, and then I do advisory and different things on the side. So there's elements where we're really talking about is the resilience of high achievers, right? And that's whether you're an entrepreneur, that's whether you're making your way in a corporation, that's whether you're building a law firm. There's a high achievement mentality that has to give better understanding and space, right? Not just the act of not hitting a mark or failing, but how do you deal with that? How do you learn from it? How do you keep it in perspective, right? Because we're all human, right? We've told people that we got these big dreams and they say, well, how's that project going? Like, right? and that moment where things just aren't happening as you expect, how do you put it in the right context so it doesn't dwindle the fire of your dream, but it actually enhances your learning mechanisms, right? And one of the things that I learned early on from failing, from doing things wrong, from learning how to try, fail, and adjust, is if you think about it in a positive way, some people cook things from, in my family, right, from ingredients and cookbooks. And that wasn't my family. My family cooked from handing down recipes from one person to another, and through taking that little spoon in the sauce of the gumbo and tasting it. And that means that you're constantly iterating to get to what excellence looks like, feels like, and tastes like. And since most of us today grow up where we think there's some kind of prescription for success, you think you have to be exact too early in your process. And so one of the things that I learned in starting businesses, failing businesses, growing and selling a few businesses, is that the ability to learn while you're in motion is a critical element to being highly successful, because that means while you're doing, you're evaluating the process of what's working, and you're not just celebrating why you made the six-figure sale. You're not just saying or being motivated by why you were able to hire that top candidate. You're asking the question of, why did it work? Why did it fail? So now I can adjust my best practices, my mental model, my mindset to now repeat what works and then learn what doesn't work, but not allowing those moments of success or failure to become a personal self-esteem issue, right? Because most people take so many hits based on each instance of their day, it's hard for them to run as fast as me in a business context. Because I have that right mental model of what failure is as a component to success, that means I don't allow setbacks to define who I am as an individual. I allow setbacks to be applied to the project. Does my new product idea deserve to be commercialized? Well, if nobody wants to pay me money for it, it doesn't deserve to be commercialized. That doesn't make me a bad person. That just means that idea wasn't financially viable. And being able to separate those things, I think, is really important as we help people grow their business maturity, so that you can chase your dreams, but you don't have to have your self-image tied to every step that you make. And I think that's critical for emerging leaders.
The unspoken piece there, though, is self-awareness and like understanding who you are, right? And so when we start having any conversations about especially when you use words like failure or persistence, it's also like, okay, who are you though? Like doing that self work so that you can understand, and so you don't get yourself lost, you don't lose your identity or have it get mushed into whatever project you're working on, whatever it is you're trying to do. Contextualizing also failure is important, right? So, for me, when I think about okay, like what is failure? I think so oftentimes, because we're conditioned through the world of work to think about failure as failing, like it's not achieving a metric or not doing a task. But that's not really failure. Like failure is more about understanding, one, what ultimate end goal impact are you trying to achieve, and if you achieved that ultimate impact or not, right? All these other things related to like the task and the tech you use, or like, did you do this task, or did you achieve this metric in the what you wanted? Like those are all inputs for sure, and it's not that they don't matter, but so oftentimes we contextualize it through the inputs and not as a culmination of said inputs, because there are some folks who actually end up really failing, Donald, even though they get all their inputs, quote unquote, right? Oh, we achieved these metrics. Oh, hey, we got X amount of downloads, but no one knows about my business. Oh, we got so many visitors to our site. No one wants to buy the products on the site. Hey, I made sure I got up every morning and we wrote the social media. Nobody clicked the social media. So what's the ultimate impact that you're trying to achieve? Let that be your barometer for failure and success. I think like and I believe that whether or not you articulated that way, I believe that's what I'm hearing in your initial point, because the reality is that you're able to pivot and adapt as things work or don't work all the time, because ultimately you're like, well, no, I'm trying to achieve this thing. Like for me, living corporate and like for my business, the ultimate impact I want to create fair places to work. I want to support organizations and how they build market trust. I want to have work-life blend with my family, right? I want to be able to, if I want to pause and stop and not do nothing, but sit down with my daughters, I want to be able to do that. Those are the impacts I'm trying to create. And as long as those impacts are happening, then hey, this social media post not going out on time, or this copy being a little bit off, or this person not executing how I wanted to be, those are things that need to be addressed, and they'll be addressed. but they're not failures. Failures are like things, hey, it's like, hey, we really need to do a hard, real assessment as to like what is happening because I'm not achieving the ultimate impact I want. But all of that though, and like I'm gonna give you the floor back. It's like all of that requires a heavy degree of self-coaching and self-assessment, right? Because you need to first know and be clear on what you want your impacts to be. Otherwise, you end up chasing a bunch of meaningless activity, thinking that you're being successful.
Yeah, I think as we unpack this, what you talked about earlier is those vanity metrics, right? In social media or content or different things versus the metrics that matter the most, right? Which is conversion, which is, did we make a sale? Did we further a partnership? One of the things that people do, and this is tough, right? Because let's just say you're building a presentation, right, for your leadership, right? And you're going to have 45 minutes to present to some very senior folks in your career, in your company. And you're getting ready for that presentation, you deliver the presentation, and you don't get the marks, the feedback that you were expecting, right? It just didn't go as well as you would like, right? Most people think of that as a failure versus a coaching opportunity and a growth opportunity, right? And because of that, here's what people tend to do. And I'll give you an example without name dropping, but in one of my companies, I was in a presentation. The team had worked for a good while in prepping for the meeting. And I didn't love it. I didn't love what I saw, and I didn't love it. And so I shared with them some points of feedback, some areas that they could improve, some resources they could look at to come back again and present a little bit stronger. But what I did different last week than this occurred than I did 5 years ago as a leader is I reaffirmed the things that the team was crushing it. And I reaffirmed that this miss doesn't mean the work was a waste. It means it was a foundation and a first step to get us to excellence. In our business of the diversity movement, we have webinars that now have 3, 4, sometimes 500 people per webinar on them. And we take that very serious, the trust when people give us that hour. So when we're role playing internally about what we're going to present, those are pretty serious discussions about how we feel, how our research shows up, what is our data saying, right? But I still had to reaffirm to the team that my desire to give feedback as we move to excellence doesn't mean failure. It means not ready yet for prime time. And that's different. And most people associate critique and coaching with failure. And so a big time drain, a big energy drain, a big emotional drain is because we don't have the right relationship with what is the difference between failure and coaching. What is the difference between failure and critique? Because if you're getting critique, that means someone believes you can do it better. That's a positive thing. As a business leader, if I don't think you can do it better, I'm going to be quiet. I'm not going to waste the time, words, or energy giving you coaching, critique, because I don't think you have the capacity to do what I need. So I'm going to move in a different direction. But if as a leader, I'm taking time to help you take a project and next level it because we know that this product is going to touch C-suite leaders across the globe, then instead of thinking about it as failure, I had to talk to my team about thinking about the impact we're trying to make on the world of work and put it in the proper context. So I think it's also the responsibility as leaders, and I'm talking to myself as much as anyone that's listening, to help people understand the proper context of feedback that they're given, and then the opportunity to take that feedback and move it forward again so that we all get to a better place. And I think that's a leadership miss. I think leaders sometimes just give feedback without context, give feedback without specific coaching points. And I had to learn to evolve that. I sometimes thought being crisp and clear and fast was more effective. Well, not if 5 people leave a room disappointed, disillusioned, loss of hope. Isn't it better to take an additional 10 minutes to give the full context of what you're seeing? Yes, I didn't love this, this, and this, but here's why we're doing what we're doing. Here's the impact we're making. And here's what I saw that I really appreciate, really respect, and lets me know that we're on the right track. I've had to learn how to slow that so that I could have that contextual conversation in the midst of giving very direct feedback. Now, here's the flip side, Zach. I'm giving that from the point of view as a leader, as a CEO, as an investor, as a board member. Now, flip that around as that person that's in the room giving the pitch, in the room presenting the product. If you're getting critique and you don't understand, don't lose the moment to ask for the additional context. Don't lose the moment and not asking that leader, why do you feel like this is off the mark? What should I do differently? And here's the home run. When I prepare my next version, would you be willing to review it with me one-on-one before I go in front of the lights again? And now you're flipping that conversation into a way forward, not into a way that feels like there's no end.
Man, there's so much there, right? One, I want to say, providing that contextual feedback in the context of, hey, something missed the mark, all right, or we're not reaching the goals that we're looking for. To provide contextual feedback means that you need to be a contextual leader, right? So, like, if you don't actually understand the context within which you're leading and the bigger, more systemic picture, then you're not going to be able to provide that.
That's right.
That textual comp, right? And so that's like just personal homework, frankly, in my opinion, leadership 101, especially if you're talking about senior executive leadership. If I had a conversation with someone who worked at a firm, someone who I genuinely deeply respect, and we were talking about, I was looking for budget. Down. I was trying to, hey man, what's up? Let's see what's going on. And they were talking to me, and this person's they're a senior executive, and he was explaining to me why they didn't have budget right now, right? And the pressures. He was contextualizing. Hey, here's what's happening across our industry. Here's what happened with some of the clients. You probably know some of these people.
Yep.
And here's the pressure that's creating politically, internally, in-house. Here's the pressure that's creating relationally with our clients. And so Zach, I don't have budget, but here's what I'm trying to do. Here's what we're going to make it work. Try next quarter, blah, 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 blah. So that was him. And my point in sharing that story isn't because I was a failure or anything like that or a miss. He and I were just having a conversation about, hey, what's happening? Let me get some budget, spend some money with my business. And because he's a contextual leader, he understands, he's thinking systemically. I would say he's a distant mentor of mine. So some of him giving me game, but also he just lives like that. So when he's talking to me like that, yes, part of that is part of who he is. I'm sorry, part of that is him being my mentor, but a large part of that, Donald, is that's just how he moves. So because that's the world within which he exists. That's the language and the premise that he operates from. He's going to always think through, okay, well, no, here's the landscape. To say no would be minimalistic. Let me tell you what's going on. And so like that's important. And it's so interesting too, because I think so often, this is not a finger wag at leaders. At the same time, I'm like, man, maybe it is. Maybe I'm wagging my finger, but I don't know. The one, so often, right? We reject systems thinking. So what happens is you do a presentation in front of somebody, and because your team missed a bullet point or didn't conjugate a word the right way, or the color scheme was wrong, you end up communicating that they failed. When in reality, the core concept, what they presented, the thought leadership, and the overall strategy was actually right. And so then they walk out thinking that they failed or that they missed something, when in reality is, you probably need to go ahead and get like one of these little hourly offshore folks, respectfully,
to tighten it up.
Just edit everything, to tighten it up. Now let's go the other side. Let's go the other side, Donald. Then you got these people, but here's what happens. Like when you don't contextualize success and failure properly, you have poorly contextualized teams who are now working and not actually making any type of impact.
Zach, Jack, let me jump in on that, because I want to stay on that same frequency with you. The other thing of not giving context is then you get your teams trying to make things perfect before they share it. And that's actually against collaboration and innovation, right? When most people need to share things earlier so all of the stakeholders can add their ideas and nuance to the project. And now you've really created something with diversity of thought. Now you've really created a collaborative engine. And so as leaders, we actually can minimize innovation by the way we coach. And that's something that I've really had to learn and sit with in my own walk as a leader and a team member. But I know I cut you off, but like that was an important frequency alignment, right? It was exactly on what you were describing.
I appreciate it. First of all, it's Octane Leadership. Cut me off if you want to. I mean, I'm here at your pleasure. So so here's the thing. Like you have it on this one side of like, okay, because you're not operating within like the system, within like as a systems thinker, as a leader. So then you're missing the mark on what's even being presented to you. And so then when you give bad feedback or you give out of decontextualized feedback, oh, well, this little part when this, that, and the third, oh, well, this activity, this metric isn't absolute. Well, then not only does your team exit that room, to your point, feeling disillusioned or frustrated or disappointed, but then you're also reinforcing the wrong type of thinking and work.
That's right.
So then let's flip the other way. So now you have a team. Let's say, again, this is the consequence of not like being like not operating from a systems premise. So now you have a team and they come in and they do a bunch of work and it looks okay, right? But you ain't saying nothing. You didn't achieve anything. There's no strategy. It's just a bunch of slides or presentations or images that look cute. You say, oh, this is fire. This is great. Your team, that group of people walk out thinking they did something, Donald, right? Now, they think they did something. It looked cute, but it ain't nothing. So then watch. So then that presentation goes up to the next level and the next level. And finally, someone who gets paid a lot of money goes, who did this? Right. Now your ass in trouble.
That's
right.
Hey, look, listen, that is so on point. Listen, that's why you want real feedback. Because at some point, your recommendation is going to be presented without you. And you want it to be able to stand on its own for real. The thing I will say to that is somebody looks at it and it's cute and they don't say anything and move it on. The other problem with that is most people are really, really bright. So if you give somebody false feedback, they're going to lose respect for you as a leader too. Because they knew it was cute with no content.
Right.
They knew it wasn't ready for prime time. And they're like, you know what? He don't really know what we're doing. Right. And so I think, what we're both saying in different words, but really same lane, is that feedback, collaboration, that innovative process needs to stand on its own and not be in the same bucket as failure or success. That's the work time, right? That's the knowledge work that we're doing, right? And that knowledge work is highly iterative. And we've got to reinforce that mindset.
And so when we talk about and going back to this whole to this broader understanding of just what success or failure is, being really disciplined, be really disciplined in how you're defining success, be disciplined in how you define failure. So that way, even on days, right? And I'll say this, right, as somebody who, mental health is important for my personal life. I'm neurodivergent. I can have really high days. I can have some really low days. And so being clear and disciplined and committed to yourself on, okay, here's what success means. Here's what failure means. Success for me is I don't have to worry about where I gotta eat. I got enough bread. If I need to sit still for years, I can. My family cares about me. And then, okay, now that's success for me. Now let's talk about success for my business. And it's important. You said it earlier. It's important to delineate yourself from the things that you do, right? Because your business your business is gonna have very high soaring days.
Yeah.
And there's gonna be days when people don't think about your business at all.
That's right.
And so, like, what do you do in the meantime? You're gonna exist like that? You're gonna exist. You're going to exist with the ebbs and flows of your business. The economy is terrible right now. There's a lot of people's businesses right now that aren't doing that great. A lot of people, Donald, irrespective of what they how hard they starch their suits, are struggling just to keep their lights on. Does that mean that you're a bad person? Does that mean that you're diminished, or are there just challenges with the seasonality of work, right? With business, and so knowing and being clear with that is the first step, and then after that, like we talked about earlier, defining what success looks like for your business and what your ultimate impact is. Hopefully, your ultimate impact isn't we want to make a ton of money. I would hope not, but everybody's different. I'm more mission driven. People have different philosophies on that. But it's really about being clear, right? Your company's success and what impact looks for like that for your company is not necessarily one-to-one with your personal success, what it looks like for you as an individual.
That's right.
And being clear with that, that's important.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think one of the things that we talked about right at the top was that success and failure kind of differentiation, but also persistence, right? And that ability to be resilient, whatever word you want to use, but that ability to get up when you've been knocked down, right? And, throughout my career, I've had some times where I've been knocked down. I had some times where the future prospects just weren't looking amazing. And at those times, you have to decide if you're going to continue, right? Or if you're going to give up and give in. And the big thing that I did over my career is I made that choice, right, to continue to push. Did I learn? Did I pivot? Did I change? Oh, yeah, all those things. But did I continue to believe in self, right? And then figure out how to change my environment so I could get more productivity for myself. Sometimes it was me. Sometimes it was the environment. Sometimes it was if you don't really create that reflection, you just blame yourself for everything. And some things aren't within your control. So you got to change the environment to regain some control. So how do you develop resilience is really what I want to talk about for a minute, because we talk about resilience, but okay, great. That's what it is. How do I develop it if I don't have it? And so that resilience is number one. If your dream is so focused and dialed in, you can't give it up. So let me talk about my kids for just a minute. I have 4 kids. And I didn't really think about inheritance, different things. This is what I wanted for my 4 kids: to be able to pay for their education if they wanted to go to school, be able to help them with a down payment for their house, right? And then when they finish school, to buy them a car that would last them 6 to 7 years from when they graduated, so that they would graduate from college with no debt, no car payment, and be able to get into the home ownership game. Those were the 3 things I wanted to do for my kids. And so then when I was having a tough day, when I was having something that wasn't working my way, I was able to zone in on what I wanted my responsibility to be, to set my kids up to go further faster, just like was done for me and my family, right? And so you have to, in order to maintain and grow resilience, you have to have goals that are not just financial, to your point, but they tie themselves to people you don't want to let down. Your goals are aligned with people that you refuse to let down. Then you will find within you that next level of emotional toughness, that next level of commitment, that next level of energy to help you be resilient. The second thing when you think about resilience is that it's really, really important to know what you're good at. Maybe the reason you're not succeeding as far and as fast is you're doing something that doesn't really align with your skills and your passion and your purpose. So if you're in the wrong environment, it's hard to be successful. It's hard to keep getting back up because there's all these things outside that are holding you back, and you don't even know why. You think it's is it because I'm black? Is it because I'm a woman? Is it because of this? It may be those things, but it also may be you're in the wrong environment. Stop sentence. The third thing that I would say on resilience is this: who is inspired because you overcome? See, when I was going through my tough times, I said, all right, wait a minute. When I make it, when I'm a millionaire, when I make it, when I learn how to grow and exit companies, when I make it and do this, how many people will be better off because I win? And when I think about those things, then all of a sudden, hey, man, I get back to it. It doesn't mean I don't need a day. It doesn't mean I don't need a week. It doesn't mean I don't have all those different emotions. But we are all geared to go further and fight harder for other people that we love and care about, that we're responsible for, than sometimes we will for self. So I make sure my goals are tied into people that I'll never quit on. And that's how I stay resilient.
That's profound, right? And I think especially, and it's a bit countercultural in this age of heightened individualism, right? To say, well, no, look, I'm doing this for it, but there's so many stories of it. I mean, to your point, like I think about my first job, Donald, out of college was at Target. I was an HR manager. And so I was only there for 8 months, but I learned a lot. I learned first main thing I learned is I didn't want to work at Target. But after that, I learned. But also,
hey man, you a mess, man.
Man, I can't help it, brother. I'm a whole card. But the other thing I learned was about, they had really great people frameworks in terms of just their models just made a lot of sense, because you think about any big box retailer, by design, they scale, right? So you think about like, hey, this store has to exist 100 other times, 1,000 other times, 2,000 other times. So we need to have a structure and system in place that can train up and basically create the same thing over and over and over, right? And so because you want to have similar results, irrespective of where you place that store, there's blah, 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 blah. So anyway, one of the things that they had was they talked about just their core values and their core like behavioral competencies. And one of the things that they had was resilience and adaptability. And that was the name of one of them. And I don't know, that was like 13 years ago. So I don't know what they are now, but it resonated with me back then. And I thought about, okay, what does it mean to be resilient? For me, I would really say my three superpowers, creativity, coachability, and resilience and adaptability. Those are the things that I know that you're not going to see me on. And the resilience and adaptability is just so important because it's hard to fail, for real, right? It's hard to fail if you don't give up. Like, if you don't give up, like, when I think about podcasting as an example, a lot of times there are podcasts, for those who are listening, because their podcasts are a growing norm. Podcasting as an industry, as a balloon, it's going to continue to grow. They're projecting by 2030, it's going to be crazier even. We haven't even really gotten started. But podcasting, if you actually just don't stop, eventually you're going to find success. That you're going to find some result. You're going to get higher downloads. You're going to get ad deals. You're going to get whatever. You're going to get notoriety. You're going to get the guests that you want. And I think when it comes to just business and anything, the difference between failure and success is how long you're willing to keep going. You think about, there's all these posts and articles that happen on social media about people who blossomed and bloomed in their 40s and their 50s, right? And we had an earlier conversation about, story versus glory. You don't know, like, Ava DuVernay, yeah, she popped off in her 40s, but you don't know that she was working and doing her thing. She just didn't give up in her 20s, right? Danny DeVito, his late 30s, I want to say, is when he started picking up. Like there's people out there, they choose simply to not quit. When you talk about resilience, it's hard to build. It's not impossible. It's hard to build resilience and adaptability if you come from really privileged or cushy contexts. And so it's harder work. You can do it, but it's going to feel like work. Whereas I do believe, for those who are listening who might be on the margins or coming, the reality is that resilience and adaptability is kind of like just intrinsic to certain marginalized experiences, right? So I think about Donald, like my upbringing, single parent, lower middle class, definitely did not ever go to bed hungry, right? Did not go to school with holes in my clothes. So I don't, and because my mama might mess around and listen to this. Mom, I'm not saying that. Thank you. But what I will say is I had a different experience. I knew what it meant to not have the same thing that maybe somebody else had, or I knew that if I did have that same thing, my mom probably went in debt for me to have it. So this idea of, hey, like, I know what it was like to not have, so I'm gonna hustle. I'm gonna grind for my kids because I don't want them to have that, and selfishly, I don't want to go back. So there's some trauma tied into my resilience and my adaptability. There's some chip on my shoulder. I'm gonna prove this person wrong because they thought I was gonna fail. I'm not giving up. There's some so everybody's motor and fuel is different. I've been working when it comes for me is I think marriage and children have helped retool my engine, so to speak, Don, and change my fuel to be more of what you're discussing right now, right? Which is, hey, my stuff not gonna fail because I have two little girls. I have a wife. I have my mom. I have my dad who all love me and depend on me for various things. And I'm and in the spirit of not only making sure that they have what they need, but also I want them to be able to look back when I'm 80 and them go, dang, how did you do that? Or you did this, dang, that happened and you still did? I'll never forget, I was working at a huge global consulting firm. And the person who was, so they call him your relationship leader, relationship manager. It's not like a typical org where it's like, okay, you got this person, right? So it's so matrix that you typically have somebody that's kind of responsible for you, and you kind of do what they tell you, and they help you find projects and blah blah blah. But ultimately, they have all the power. They have the power over you. They make and break your career. And I'll never forget. Got on the phone and they said, "Listen, I think that you're too focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I don't see you having a future here. And I think you need to consider if you feel like you can be successful here." Now, of course, we have a conversation the other day about documentation and people trying to play you in your face. So I had a
Amen.
So I pulled out some documentation. I was like, first of all, I got all my performance reviews right here. I'm doing all the things you said I'm not doing. Here's like 20 other people that said I am doing it. I mean, what are you talking about? Don't play with me like that. But the point was, this person, he knew what I was going through. He knew I just had he knew what was happening, what was going on in my life. And he did that to me anyway. And so when I turned around and I had my documentation, for me in that moment, Donald, I said, oh, you think I'm about to like die? Oh, you think I'm about to stop? Watch something. I got something for you. I'm going to go even harder. I'm going to make you look goofy. And then when I get what I need out of here, then I'm going to quit. What's up? And I did that. But like that resilience, it has to come. I think that, again, like depending on your context, you got to figure out what that fuel is for you and what is important. Because sometimes, like what I realized, Donald, is, so I was talking to my wife about this, is like, I used to think it's like, okay, hey, you got to survive or you got to die. What you going to do? But Donald, there's a lot of people who be like, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people. And I didn't know that. I assumed that everybody had this deep, visceral desire to like make it work and go get it. But everybody don't have that. I'm not saying the people here listening to this don't have it. I'm just saying, like, if that's not in you, you got to figure out, I think your method of like connecting it to the people that you care about and not letting other people down and knowing who you are. And so that's some self-work and self-coaching you have to do. But you got to build that because it's hard. It's hard, I think, to manufacture that. So you can build it brick by brick, piece by piece over time. right? I came out of college with a lot of that. I ain't gonna hold you, Don, I ain't gonna hold you. I came out of middle school with a lot of that because of just my own trauma. I came out with a lot of that. I probably had my power level back then was probably higher than a lot of executives are now because of just what I was going through, right? So it's important, like, if you know, and this is more like a conversation between you and you. If you know you ain't really cut like that, then you gotta do the self work to build it up, because the more you have it, the more successful you will be on the back end. The more your returns are going to be, the more resilient you are. I firmly believe that. There are so many people who have $1 million ideas, but have like $2 resilience. You know what I'm saying?
I do. And one of the things to extend on what you're saying is, if you don't have that level of backbone, for lack of a better way to describe it, you won't actually share your full ideas because you're fearful. Your own fear, uncertainty, and doubt is holding you back as much as anything else in this world. And it's easy, like, I want to be really not careful, I want to be clear. There are things that are systemic that hold Black and brown people back. There are things that are systemic that hold women back in the workplace. There are things and systems that don't make accessibility for low vision and blind professionals. These are real things. What I'm talking about is the mental model and the mindset that we can control. And one of the things that's really important is understanding the environment you're in. And here's the real deal. You are trying to win in a world designed for you to fail. And that means you have to be stronger each day to push through that storm. And once you get to the blue sky, you realize it was within your capacity to do it. And now you can help other people understand their resilience and strength as well. It's an experiential thing, but if you believe that everyone has to change the way they treat you in order for you to feel comfortable, then you have to wait for somebody else to change for you to feel comfortable. If you can create within self the ability through your capacity, through what you deliver, through how you are diligent in your learning and development of your skills, you will naturally be more forthful and forthright with the ideas you share, and that will naturally make you stand out. The creation of fear is part of the hustle, right? Make you fearful, right, of critiquing something your boss did. Make you fearful of speaking in front of people in a meeting. Make you fearful of XYZ. All of a sudden, the person that's not fearful speaks up. They say the same thing you were thinking. They get the new assignment and credit, and you were sitting there silent, right? That's not a DEI thing. That is a you raising your hand and saying, I have something to contribute thing. And then creating an environment where that contribution is valuable. I'm very aware that some environments aren't conducive to success. That means you got to learn what you got to learn while you find an environment that is. But when you're there, you have to behave in a way that is practicing every day for your moment, because you don't know who's watching. I'll tell you a quick story. And oh man. So in 2005, I was working with a company called iCubed. I was the vice president of sales. Grant Willard, my mentor, friend, was the CEO. At the end of 2005, Adobe Systems, multi-billion-dollar company, acquired the technology from our little bitty software startup. They did not want the technology services side of the business. They only wanted the product assets. And so Grant sold the technology, and 5 engineers went with the transaction. I was promoted from vice president to CEO of the remaining business that Adobe did not want to buy. We took that business from 16 people, grew it to 140 people, and had a multi-million-dollar exit. What if I would have loafed on one of the days Grant was thinking about who was going to succeed him as CEO? What if I didn't put in the effort the day that Grant was evaluating my skills, my capacity, my ability to be resilient? One of the scariest things that I think about is what if I had been lazy on the day he was determining what my future could be working together? Because when he sold the business and tapped me to be CEO of the other part of the business, he also did this. He allowed me and 16 other employees to do an employee buyout of the remaining assets, and we all became owners. And then when we flipped that business 7, 8 years later, we created multiple millionaires. And so my point is, we're all in environments that we would hope that environment is better. But you also need to behave in a manner that lets you realize that every day is interview day, because you never know who's watching. And if the leader you work for directly doesn't appreciate you, maybe another one that has heard good things about you does. Maybe that headhunter that sees you and reads something that you post on LinkedIn does. So it's not necessarily where you are today that's going to give you the validation that you need. So stop seeking it every single day. It may be somebody that comes into your life at a different moment, but you got to be ready for your moment. My only claim to fame is I was ready for my moment. And when that opportunity presented to me, I was there to receive it. Now, I wasn't ready to be CEO, didn't know what that was. I wasn't ready to lead a multi-million-dollar software company. I've never written a line of code. Right? But I was ready to chase it. And Grant trusted me enough with that opportunity, right? And we were able to grow. And that was a huge component of my business trajectory. And so I'm so glad that every day that I was working, I was doing all I could with what I had. It didn't mean I got it right. Didn't mean there weren't mistakes. Didn't mean there weren't ups and downs. It just meant when people use terms like quiet quitting and all that, it means lose me with that. I'm doing quiet winning.
No, yeah.
Right? Because I don't know how to
quit. So, and it's interesting too, to your point about like perseverance and persistence and resilience and adaptability, like they all go hand in hand. Because I think about in that same season where when I was telling you my story about this person who was like, you don't really belong here because you're too focused on DEI. And despite there being no quantitative or qualitative evidence to that, while I was being told I didn't belong by that person and that company, I was actively still building relationships and networking with other senior leaders to help me get what I needed to get. Right. And it was, and here's the thing. I could have said, well, he said I don't belong here, so I'm going to just go ahead and leave. But then like, what would have happened? Like, there's so many relationships that I built at that place because I decided not to leave. I decided to keep going. I ended up meeting somebody who is now my head of information and insight at Living Corporate. Without him, we wouldn't be selling data analytics solutions. So it's like, without him, without that relationship, I wouldn't have gone on to leave and go into tech and continue to learn product market strategy and go-to-market strategy and product development. There's so many things to your point about some days I scare myself thinking about, man, if I wasn't who I am, if I decided to give up, if I decided to be upset, or I decided to not keep pushing, right? And I'll say this too, for the sake of this story, is what's funny about it is, Donald, I still took my paternity leave and took my mental health leave. I was gone for like 10 months with pay. You feel me? But I didn't quit. I collected. Hey, listen, I collected every check, Donald.
Hey, my dad taught me a lot, but one of the main things is you got to learn how to win with the cards you're dealt. That the world is not fair because we hope it to be. You got to win with the cards you're dealt. And that doesn't mean we don't keep pushing for fairness, pushing for equity, all of these things. But while we're doing it, we got to win in the space of reality that we're in at this moment. And I will say this for us that are listening, this is, it pains me to say this, and not because Democrat or Republican, because Trump's not a Republican. I don't know what he is, but he has a legitimate chance of winning, and which is scary in its own right. But here's my point for people listening: you have to prepare to win in any environment, and so that means there's some potential turbulence coming in our country, in our world, in our politics. It doesn't matter what you believe or not, but it's going to be disruptive, right, to how we operate within a business context because it's such a significant seismic shift, right, that's going on in the political arena. It's going to impact businesses. And so my hope is when that chaos comes, we make sure that we don't let external things keep us off of our goals and purpose in the moment that we can control. That's my point. Because there's going to be a lot of talk, there's going to be a lot of water coolers, there's going to be a lot of all of this stuff, right? But you got to keep focused and move, right, in a manner that helps you continue to move towards your goals, your dreams, your purpose, right? Because succeeding financially, succeeding corporately, succeeding business-wise is actually the only way you're going to amplify your influence. So don't get distracted.
Man, that's a mic drop right there. You got it.
Appreciate you,
Donald. Man, thank you for having me on High Octane Leadership, brother. We got to make sure to have these. I want to come back. All right, so I'm gonna coordinate with your team. Your people will call my people.
Well, I appreciate it. Well, you're welcome back anytime. And I'll say this, like, just sincerely, your drive, perseverance is an example of what I'm describing. And that's why it's so easy to talk with you about it, because you're living it, right? We're at different times in our season because of our age and different things. But like, I get what you're trying to do, which is build something transformational. And that makes us connected, right? And it doesn't have to be having the same dream, it's having a big dream. And then that allows us to support each other and cheer for each other. So I'm a big fan and appreciate you for jumping on today.
Hey, the feeling is mutual, Don. We'll talk soon, brother. Peace.
Thank you for joining us on High Octane Leadership with Donald Thompson. Today's episode is a step in our collective journey towards leadership excellence. Remember, every story we share and every insight we gain is a piece in the puzzle of our leadership journey. For more insight and detail, hit the subscribe button so that we can stay connected. For deeper information and more episodes, go to donaldthompson.com. Continue to lead with vision and purpose, and until we meet again, embrace your role as a high-octane leader in the ever-evolving world of business.